Card King, here I come. Hello, sports fans, sports collectors, and all hobbyists. Welcome to the Card King Sports and Variety Show. I am your host, the Catman, Brian Cataquet, a.k.a. the Card King. We are live on ABC's KMET 1490 AM.com, your number one spot right here for news and talk on the West Coast. I thank everyone for tuning in this morning. On the program today, I welcome in a former heavyweight boxer. He's an author, motivator, educator. We welcome in Ed Latimore. Ed, Brian C., thanks for your time this morning.
Hey, I'm pretty good today, man. Thank you for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. Ed, reading through your bio on your website, I found very interesting. When people ask you about your life, you like to break it up in 4 phases. Talk a little bit about your first phase.
Yeah, so I grew up in Pittsburgh, PA, in public housing, and with that, I experienced the typical life of somebody who grows up in that environment. So I was born to a single mom. We were on public assistance, on and off, and I observed a lot of violence and just really a lot of the typical things you think about, the gang violence, and then there was like the violence out there. But I mean, I've even seen people get killed, unfortunately. It's a really rough background and rough place to be. And there's a reason a lot of people don't make it out. There's a lot of things that can catch you, a lot of things that can suck you and then keep you there. Beyond the attitudes and I think perspectives that tend to get passed down from generation to generation that are necessary to succeed in a place like that. But I was really fortunate that fortunate, man, because I had encountered some good luck and some good people, plus a little bit of we'll call it like genetic advantage. I mean, I feel like I came up with a pretty good grasp of perspective and people. Certainly, like not a mature one, but an intuitive one that I leaned on, and I think helped me navigate that area of my life in that time.
No, I totally get what you're saying, because I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, near East New York, which, is a lot of housing projects. So I totally can relate to you. I read a quote you said once, coming out of an environment like the projects, one that you're raised in, it's hard to find productive citizens to emulate, right?
Yeah. Yeah, there's not a lot of role models.
Yeah, but so now why did you choose boxing, Ed? Was it a way you figured you can release tension and aggression?
No, my story behind boxing is I think relatively different than a lot of guys who end up fighting. Maybe a little more in line with guys who are fighting in my division now, which is I was a heavyweight. So I wasn't like doing anything of what my life really at the age of 22, because that's when I started fighting. I'm a late bloomer in the sport. Though now in the heavyweight division, a lot of guys are coming in after they play like football in college or stuff like that, because you got to build your body up. But I was, I was a bit of a pioneer in that era where you're coming in late. And the reason I did that, I was trying to figure out a way to make my life, worthwhile. So there was something going on, and I was working at Starbucks or something, and barely, just living paycheck to paycheck. And I said, let me do something to show I've been on this planet. And I looked at 2 options. I was going to enlist in the military or start fighting, and I chose fighting. And I did it the right way, which is that I went as a 22-year-old and started my amateur career fresh. I didn't try and jump right into the pros, what some people do. And you won't really find anyone with the success that does that, but some guys do it. But I built and I started, no money, more time, and in fact, paying the train, which is what we all have to do at some point, and built my time up and spent time in the gym, in the ring, just getting better as a fighter and getting better as a person. That's really the real benefit of boxing, in my opinion.
I mean, you had a pretty solid amateur boxing career, record of 40-11. I mean, you defeated notable fighters like Charles Martin, and others. Winner of the 2011 PA Golden Gloves, right? PAL
Yeah.
winner as well. So I mean, you had a solid amateur boxing career. So did you feel this is something that was destined for you to do?
Oh man, if it was destined for me to do, man, the gods have a sense of humor, man. I am a short, small heavyweight. These guys, I actually just wrote this piece on my website because everyone always asks me, those who have never fought, I should say, they always ask me like, "Hey man, well, why'd you stop fighting after a record of 13-1-1? This only one loss." And I'm like, man, you got to understand there are so many factors to go into it. But one of the factors that went into it is, when I started fighting in 2008, there weren't these giants. I mean, they existed, like there was the Klitschko's at the top, and they were these big dudes. But these guys now, the average height in the division is 6'4". Man, I'm 6'1". The average weight is like 240. I'm like 215 is what I was fighting at when I was really, kicking and at the top of my game. And so I say all that to say, if I was destined to do this, man, it was a great joke they played and giving me the tools they gave me. No, I willed myself through. I willed myself through and then put myself through what is effectively a rite of passage. And I always say you don't get to choose your rite of passage, man. It chooses you, and you either make it or you don't. That's kind of what makes it important. I learned what it was like to fight bigger guys that could hit harder and could lean on me and push me around, and that does a thing to your character that makes you have to approach your training seriously the whole way through. I think some guys get to lean on natural talent. I say I am of average talent at best, but I put a lot of work in.
Yeah, and you speak about training. Now, you were trained by one of the most respected trainer and minds of the sport, Tom Yankelo, right?
Mm-hmm.
How important was Tom in your life?
Extremely important. Not just as a boxing trainer, right? That's what he's known for. That's what he's good at. That's what he's done his whole life. That's what he's built his name on. He's been a significant, teacher and honer of my craft, right? And I really learned a lot of the sport from him, but also just being a really solid role model. Tom's probably the first, one of two maybe I could think of like real male role models that I had, guys I could look at and go, that's somebody I should try to become like. Those that he has habits that I would like to emulate and integrate into my life. And so, now he's a great friend, and because I stay in shape, I always go up and try and help him out when he's got guys in the upper weight classes who are sparring, and a lot of he's really embraced technology, which is nice. And so whenever I can drop insight on being on social media and stuff, that's cool. But he's just a really great teacher, and being around him by proxy has exposed me to other great fighters. I mean, I was the sparring partner for Roy Jones when he was getting ready for the Tyson fight, and that was a great experience being able to do that. And I get to do that just because I happen to pick Tom and train with Tom and be committed to his system and buying in, and it was a good time.
Yeah, we're talking with Ed Latimore, a former heavyweight boxer, author, motivator. Looking at your pro statistic record from 2013 to 2016, you mentioned 13-1 was your record. Not shabby. I mean, your first pro fight against John Hill. How emotional was that first pro fight going into to the ring?
Fortunately, because I did it right, and I came up as an amateur and fought at a pretty high level as an amateur, it honestly felt like a bit of a downgrade. And I had guys message me afterwards, and they were like, "Man, do you think it was cool that they put you in on your debut with a guy that was 4-1 and who was a southpaw?" And my thought was like, "Come on, man! Like I have fought, like Charles Martin was a southpaw. I beat him twice as an amateur, so I was like, oh, I'll be fine. And he's huge. Hill was bigger. Everyone's bigger than me. Almost everyone I fought was bigger than me. And Hill was no different. But it was a good experience because you go, oh, I've done all of this and now it's come together. And in that fight, I actually got hurt in the second round. I got he snuck a good left hand in there, and I was like, oh man, that's a doozy. And that was the first time I realized, man, 10-ounce gloves tell no lies. You spend your time training in 14s and 16s sparring. Well, we know what spars in 14s, but it is a as an amateur, you only fight in 12-ounce gloves, and then you come, and that glove is actually designed to protect your hand too. These gloves in the professional ranks there's less padding, and it is all designed to transmit force. In fact, you're supposed to like break them in and get your knuckle as close to coming out the front of the glove as possible without that actually happening. So getting hit the first time was a little shocking, but you come back and Tom actually gave me a really good piece of adjustment, and it helped, and I got him out of there, and that was a great experience. I felt really good about that.
Yeah, Ed, and you scored a third round technical knockout win over John Hill. And then three of your next four fights, you again tallied knockouts. Then in 2015, you fought your first 6-round bout, right?
Yeah.
And you won unanimous over Brandon Spencer. How was that experience for you?
That was funny, because I was a better, fighter than Spencer, and I just you always got to be careful with the judging, because if I remember correctly, it was like in the third or second round, he hit me, and it actually wasn't like I didn't feel anything. The judge thought I was stunned, and so in West Virginia they have standing 8, so I got a standing 8. Then I got hit again, and I got another standing 8, and I was like, oh wow, we're like in real danger here of losing a fight to a guy I should walk through, and it was close, but I go and win, kind of unanimously, and there was never a chance. And on top of that, whenever you get a standing or a count, that's a deduction of points. So I lose a round 10-7. That's pretty significant to come back against. But I come back and win the fight, and I was very, very just pleased with myself in that performance. And that was like the last fight I fought unsigned, because when you're not signed, you gotta fight where you can fight, and you fight for like no money. And that was the last fight I fought without getting a little more money. It's still not a lot, but it was more than you typically get fighting on club shows.
But I mean, you were gaining. I mean, your momentum was riding high. Your notoriety was gaining respect. I mean, here you are knocking out people. I mean, knocking out other fighters. I mean, looking back, Ed, did you have a dream opponent you wanted to face?
No, because I'm realistic almost to a fault about these things, and I understood very early that having a dream opponent, it's just a dream. You got to fight whoever they put in front of you that makes the most sense. It's not exactly whoever they put in front of you, but it's close enough to it may as well be. And so I knew that, like, whoever I had to fight, it's whoever I had to fight, and I just showed up and did the job. It was a very I approached the sport with a very workmanlike ethic, I think, and that kept me grounded. I never got caught up in talking trash or shout or calling people out, because I knew ultimately that would do nothing. It was just to sell, and I wanted to fight. It's probably maybe a little bit of a weakness, but in the end, you are who you are, and I love, and I fought some really cool guys when I was an amateur too. I really I never had aspirations to go after the big fish. I was just like, I don't want to phrase it like that, but I knew that having that list would not make a difference, so I never had it. Actually, let me correct that. I just thought about this. I would have loved to fight some of the guys I was training with out in L.A. who went on to become pros, particularly Martin and Brazil, because we had such a great. First of all, they're great guys and great friends, but we fought a lot as amateurs, and I would have loved to have fought them as pros, but that wasn't going to happen. I mean, we would have. That's where the business of boxing comes in, and there's no way they would have had us fight at all.
So those were two fighters that you admired?
Not only just admired, but as part of my amateur career that really helped is as I trained in this group. It was called All American Heavyweights, and what they were trying to do out there in Los Angeles, where it was based, they were trying to bring together former Division I athletes and turn them into fighters. This is when I won the 2011 Golden Gloves for Pennsylvania. I go to nationals. My first opponent was Dominic Brazil. He was California's representative, but he was part of that program. And so when I beat Brazil, they brought me out there as part of the program. They were like, let's see what you do. And I ended up lasting, fighting Charles Martin twice. I fought Brazil again, and he beat me, ultimately going on to represent us in the Olympics. That was the tournament that was to select the U.S. representative to go on to the I can't remember what the word is, but where they picked the zones for the Olympics. But it was those guys I would have loved to fight them again as pros, because it would have been a good time. Plus, you kind of have an edge because or an inside track, because what they're about and how to come and get in their head and stuff like that. But other than that, no, because I didn't know anybody. I didn't have anything personal draw me, any emotions draw me. I never really relied on my emotions or my feelings in the ring, but I knew those guys, and that would have been a cool fight to make.
A final question on boxing, then we'll get to your other work. Champ, there are fighters who fight to chase history, to chase wanting to be in the record books and win belts, while others tend to shy away from that. Which more you feel describes you?
Oh, I was definitely in there to hone myself. I figured the accolades and things like that, those were merely symptoms, or side benefits is probably a better description. They were incidental side benefits that will come as a result of sticking to a process. I can't control that outcome, who I fight, how the judges see it if it gets there, whatever, but I can control how I approach the sport, how I let it refine me, sharpen up my emotions and my psychological durability. So for me, it was very much a pursuit of mastery and self-improvement. I never cared about any of the external stuff beyond like I would hate being looked over. That bugged me for a little bit, but as long as I get the kind of the minimum shake of representation, I'm very much there to become a better fighter and a better person.
Yeah, and you're considered a well-known motivator, and you've written several books. Now, being a pro athlete, I mean, the ego gets involved. What's your feeling on the ego? Because competitive sport, even in my industry, when you're a personality, the ego gets involved. What's your take on the human ego?
Okay, so you need to control it and keep it in check, but you need to rely on it and foster it. It's like fire, it can ruin it, it can burn a home to the ground or heat it. It can be destructive or constructive, and I think the ego is no different. If you're going to be that god, you have to know you're that god. The problem is when fighters start believing their own hype to the point where it distorts their perception of reality and makes them think they're better than they really are, then you end up with a problem. You end up with a guy who becomes complacent and doesn't put the work in the gym, things like that. A tale of two fighters, if you want to compare this, you compare Floyd Mayweather's career to Adrian Broner. When Adrian Broner was coming up, they were comparing him to Floyd Mayweather. The difference is I wholeheartedly believe, from everything I've seen and heard, looking through the lines and just knowing the community, Mayweather is unbelievably grounded. It just looks like he's this huge showman because he's good at selling. He knows what he's doing. I don't think you could be that good at what he does and generate money if you didn't know what you were doing. Like I can't imagine that's just a personality quirk. There's some trained stuff in there. And he wasn't always like that. I mean, he was Pretty Boy Floyd before, and then turned into Money Mayweather because he understood that it was a more marketable way to be. Contrast that to Broner, who started to really fall off and kind of believe his own hype and his antics in the ring. A great example of that is his fight against Marcos Maidana, is when he starts humping him and turning him around, and Maidana knocks him down and beats him pretty badly, and that's the difference. You can't let your ego distort you from reality. You have to have that thing in check and use it. You can't let it use you.
Amazing. Now you've written several books. For the audience listening to this program, where can they pick up your books? Talk a little bit about some of your work regarding your books.
So you can pick them up on Amazon first of all, and then that's the books. You know, not like the gods and the things where like the real money is made, but the books you can grab those on Amazon. And I have two on Amazon, really three, but three was kind of a joke, and I was just having fun. But the first one, they're all self-published, and we live in a glorious age where one can do this, and really, if you put together and grow a following, you should be good. But the first book is Not Caring What Other People Think Is a Superpower, Insights from a Heavyweight Boxer. And that's just a series of essays on different areas of my life that I worked on when I was improving and trying to come from nothing to something. And I wanted to reflect on those. I used the tweets that I put out a lot as inspiration for the individual. And then the individual essays, I included some actionable advice if you are so inclined to go do it. But yeah, that was the first book. And then a year later, well, really almost 2 years later, on December 23rd, 2018, I released Sober Letters to My Drunken Self. And that was a book where I was writing about the emotional journey of sobriety. I've been sober now for 8 years. I wanted to release it on the 5-year anniversary, and it was my way of giving back and helping people who are going through deciding to give up alcohol, but they have to deal with and battle the inner demons and the societal pressure to not do it, because we live in a society where alcohol is so integral. It's the one drug where people think you have a problem if you don't do it, or you have to justify why you don't do it. And I understood that from going through it, and I wanted to write that book to help people going through the same issue.
So, I mean, you're a man that wears many hats. What's the biggest challenge you face in your role, in your business, in your project right now?
Really just staying on task. There's so many. My life would probably be a little easier if I didn't have so many interests. And whenever I get interested in something, I try to develop at least an upper novice level ability in it, at least. And that takes time and energy. And that's kind of that's my biggest challenge, between writing and now filming videos, and then I'm putting together courses to teach stuff about writing. That's really, and then I'm always in the gym. I actually just came back from the gym. I had to make sure I got my morning workout in. But the cool thing is, when you're busy, because it's stuff you genuinely chose and want to do, then it's invigorating. Like, I'm excited to get out of bed every morning, and I'm exhausted when I go to sleep. But in between, it's kind of hectic, but it's a good kind of hectic because I'm making progress and I think making a difference. I would like to hope that most people's lives are a little better by coming across me than not.
Yes, we have a couple of minutes left, and the website is edlatimore.com. I want to ask you, Ed, what is the most important lesson you've learned over your career?
The most important lesson, man, given enough time, you can accomplish anything. If you adhere to that and just stick with it and focus, you can make a really big difference in your life and not even be aware. I think the saying is, we overestimate what we can do in a day and underestimate what we can do in a year. And if you really embrace that and realize what that saying is, that we have to focus and just keep at it, you can make a really big difference in your life and really blow your mind. I've seen it. I've done it myself. And I wish everyone else would experience such transformation.
And do you do meditation? Is meditation part of your routine?
It's not part of my regular routine, but I am embracing it even more because I need it. Because there are so many benefits to meditation that I'm kind of foolish for not, especially the way I live my life. I need to focus a bit more and have a still mind.
Well, listen, I really appreciate your time. Interesting information. The website is edlatimore.com, and the listeners can pick up your books and your work on amazon.com as well. Listen, I really appreciate it, man.
Hey, I really appreciate you reaching out, man. This has been a great conversation and really interesting. Believe it or not, I don't get so many boxing focused interviews these days. Everyone is more interested in a lot of the other stuff. So this has been fun.
Well, I mean, you had a great record, man, 13-1. I mean, and you stopped over a 3-year period. So I was, I mean, you answered it yourself. People were asking you, right? 13 and
Yeah.
1, 13-1. Why did you stop?
Yeah, it's a crazy game, man. And really, the fighters who know me, they never ask because they know, the money I make now just writing and being on the internet. They're like, oh, if you can do that without this life, that's great. And that's one of the reasons I cited in the article.
Yeah, and most of your wins, we got to remind, they were done by knockouts. So very talented athlete. I appreciate your time.
Hey, thank you, man. You have a good one.
You too. Ed Latimore, the website, edlatimore.com. Pick up his books on amazon.com. Until next week, happy collecting to all.